Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm going to tell you a little bit about hidden treasures. Welcome to everybody out there on Facebook. This is one of my favorite talks because I get to tell you about collections on Ancestry that you may never have seen, because there are so many collections that don't surface well in hints, and you're not going to maybe find them in a global search. You really want to go right to that collection. So I'm going to talk a little about show you some of the collections, and we'll talk a little bit about how to do that. The first thing is kind of a not-so-hidden treasure on Ancestry, and it's the census. We always turn to the census. It's one of our go-to resources, but nowadays, when we go to the census, we're clicking on an index, and we go right to our ancestor, right? Well, I started old school on microfilm, okay? My mom had a microfilm reader in the basement, and she would pay us $0.25 a name to find our surnames in Brooklyn. But the cool thing about that was when you're browsing, you start to notice things about the neighborhood. You start to see who lives around them. For example, in this image here, you have all these people from the Holstein area of Germany. So I'm going to look at these people as my ancestors fan club if any of these are mine, right? You want to know who these people are. Look for occupations and things that tell us the stories about our ancestors. Instead of just looking at that one little snapshot of the family, go broad. We also have mortality schedules on Ancestry. These sometimes don't surface as well, but they're very valuable, even if your ancestor didn't die in the year previous to the census, because that's who's recorded in those. And you can learn some important things, too. For example, this gentleman here died of sore eyes. So all of you out there at 3 o'clock in the morning, beware. Sore eyes, it's a real thing. You can also learn about what other people in the area were dying from. In 1849, there was a cholera epidemic that impacted across the country. In Chicago, 1 in 36 of the population died in that epidemic. So this is a huge impact. And a lot of times when you find epidemics, too, especially in urban areas, people are like, I'm getting out of town until this is over. So if you're missing your ancestor in a census year and there was an epidemic during that year, that could explain it. They may have gone to live with family in the country or somewhere out of the city where you're not in those crowded conditions. We have non-population schedules. A lot of people tell me, oh, my ancestors were just farmers, and that's not really interesting. But it is interesting. We can find out whether they owned or rented their property, the amount of acres they had, how much was farmable, what kind of machinery they owned, their cost and income, the number of the livestock, and if they had lost livestock during that year. That'll be in there as well. And some of these, they varied from year to year. They were taken between 1850 and 1880, and the availability varies. So you want to browse and see what's available for your ancestors' county. But learning the value, what was the value of their farm? And then compare it between 1860 and 1870. If they were in an area where the Civil War was impacting them, that value may have been dramatically impacted. So you're getting to see these stories and the things that are happening throughout your ancestors' lives. How many people have 1925 Iowa census, or people in Iowa? You know about this census, right? This is what they call the mother lode. It asks for the name, relationship of the head of household, color, age, marital status, home ownership, or value or rent, citizenship, number of years in the U.S., number of years in Iowa, so now you can know when they got to the area, education level, literacy. That is page 1. Page 2 asks for place of birth, father's name, his place of birth and age, mother's maiden name, her place of birth and age, where the parents were married. Page 3, right? There's more. It asks for military service. It asks what state they enlisted, their occupation, were they unemployed that year, and how many months, and their religious affiliation. This is a gold mine all in one census. You got to remember to page forward to, and this goes for any collection. A lot of our collections have more than one page to them. You land on page 1. Make sure you keep paging forward and get the complete record. This is a really kind of a niche collection, but it's an example of how rich records can be. The Tennessee Valley Authority impacted states around Tennessee, not just Tennessee, Mississippi, parts of Georgia. There were a lot of states that were impacted when they started the Tennessee Valley Authority. They were building hydroelectric dams and doing all these improvements, and a lot of people were displaced. Whole communities were flooded. So they took these surveys of the people that they may have had to relocate, and in there you could say, like this family here of the Davises, it says their chief trade center was a store 2 miles from their home. They went about 4 times a month. They rented a frame house. They had a tub for bathing, 4 rooms that were heated by a wood-burning fireplace, oil lamps, and their water source was a spring 300 yards from the house. There was no toilet facility, but they had a sewing machine and a guitar. And it also tells us that their church preference was Baptist and they were engaged in farming. The next page says that they're sharecroppers. They had been running for 2 years. It talks about the various crops they planted, the livestock they owned, what kind of machinery, and how much money they made from it. This page is more about income. This family made $73 from butter, $50 from pork, $39 from corn. Their total income for 1934 was $268.50. They had 9 kids. So the other section talks about expenditures, debt, the age of the husband and wife, number of times married, education level, their health, who's the mother's maiden name, deaths in the family from that year, how many people were ill. I guess 5 of their kids had the chills that year. And then this final page lists the children at home, those not at home, and any members of the household, their age, relationship, dependency, educational levels, employment, health. And then it talked about their future plans. You know, do you want to move? What kind of opportunities are you looking for, education-wise or employment-wise? So a lot of really personal details. I mean, this is really great stuff. But in addition to moving the living, the TVA also had to remove the dead, or the families were given the option of it. So the Tennessee Valley Authority would write these letters to the family and say, oh, look, we know your ancestor's buried in this cemetery. Would you like him to be relocated or her to be relocated, and where? This is one for Richard Lancaster. It gives his birth and death date. And it also talks about, it names all the surviving relatives down at the bottom here. And you can see up here that the family did not sign the consent. So his grave is probably underwater. So without scuba gear, you're probably not going to see that headstone. Naturalizations are amazing records too. We have a lot of indexes and we have a lot of actual records. They're broken up into a lot of different collections, but even an index can be really revealing. This is one for Peter Szucs. My name is Szucs too, but when I was working at a bank, there was a janitor that used to come by me, and every day he would come by and say, how do you say your name? And I'd say Szucs. He said, no, Szucs, Szucs. And so he made me learn how to pronounce my name in Hungarian. But now when I look at these indexes, you can see that Peter changed his name to S-E-A-C-H. He's trying to pronounce it phonetically. So this happened a lot with our ancestors. In naturalization records, because they recorded these name changes, this is a great place to find the name of your ancestor, especially non-English speaking, that as they came into the country. So it'll help maybe find that passenger list. Excuse me. This is a naturalization record. This is the first step in the process, a declaration of intent. And this is for another Elizabeth Szucs, and notice now she's S-U-I-C-H. So this was very common for them to just decide, let's just pronounce my name phonetically. And the details that you can find on here are fantastic. It tells you, her address and all that type of thing, her occupation, but it also is giving you her place of origin in Yugoslavia. It gives all the names of her children and their birth dates. Here's where she sailed out of. She arrived in New York on the Neckar in 1908. And later ones, you're even going to get a photograph on these. Excuse me. These are the U.S. World War II draft cards for young men, 1940 to 1947. We've been slowly building this collection. If you were in the keynote, you probably heard that we recently just completed this collection. Every state that's available. Maine's records were destroyed, so we don't have Maine. But we have all the records for all states now for these younger men that fought in World War II. These are draft registrations, and more than 50 million men registered. So they may not have served, but they were registering for the draft. And you can find incredible details. Not only have we completed this collection, You used to have to go over to fold 3 to look at the image. The images are now all available on Ancestry. So you don't even have to go off the site to see it. But you can see it gives your address. It's going to give the name of someone who will always know your address, similar to the World War I draft cards I'm sure a lot of you have worked with. So a lot of great details, physical descriptions. These are wonderful records. And for a period, 1940s, where we don't have a lot of collections because of the privacy after the 1940 census. So these are very valuable. We also have an 1890 census Federal schedule. Only Kentucky through the end of the alphabet have survived. So anybody with A through K or through Kansas is kind of out of luck. There's also some military districts that are included, but there's some great details. If you've ever tried to look for your ancestor's Civil War pension and you don't know what unit they were affiliated with, it can be difficult, especially if you're looking for a common name. But these records put your ancestor in a particular place. You know what city they were living in, and I'm going to show you in a minute. It also gave their address. So you can kind of confirm that you have the right guy, and now here you have that military information that you would need to identify them in the pension index and try to get that pension record. It also gives when they enlisted, when they discharged, excuse me. And then also, this is a really important thing when you're looking at records on Ancestry, not just page forward, go down. That was the top of the page. This is the very bottom. So if you're looking at John Rudolph up here, you probably don't see all this. And this is the good stuff here. This gives us their address, and it also gives us a lot of little details about their service. John Rudolph was disabled with pleurotic effusion because his horse was shot out from under him, and he had 3 ribs broken. You have other people in here who, there was another guy, one guy lost his last leg in Battle of Antietam. This guy deserted from the Confederate Army, and he joined the Union Army in Captain Holmes' unit. So these are interesting pieces of their story that you can find. Now, originally, only Union soldiers were supposed to be, excuse me, only Union soldiers were supposed to be recorded. But fortunately for us, some of the census takers didn't follow the directions. So you see, these are all listed as Confederate. They're lined out, but we've tried to go in and index them so that you can find them as well. So, and again, you'll find that same type of information. State military records, we have some really rich collections. Kansas, New Mexico's another one, California, we have some. New York's got some great World War I records. This one was collected by the Historical Society, and they asked the families to write in and tell us about their sons. And so you have these stories that are written by the parents and photographs, amazing details, just beautiful records. We have voter registrations. Chicago, and these are great because in Chicago, this kind of bridges that 1890 gap. And not only that, but you can see down here, if you had immigrants who were naturalized, it gives you the court where they were naturalized and the date. So now you can go after those great naturalization records. Oh, sorry. Okay. We also have some from Missouri, and this is another reason I bring this one up. It's kind of it's a small Jackson County, Missouri voter registrations. These records are not indexed at all, and there are a lot of collections like this at Ancestry. But if you go into them, they're alphabetical, so it's really easy to browse to your ancestor in there. And local histories are fantastic resources. We have thousands of these on Ancestry, and usually they're written on a county level or maybe multiple counties, but they give you the stories you're not going to get in the history books. This talks about the Germans in Indianapolis. If you have Germans that came into an area, they may have a whole section on that migration and what brought them there. And this is one of my favorites. This is something you're not going to find in the history books. This is from Gratiot County, Michigan. The storm that went after the cows. Where else are you going to know about that? But it's kind of interesting, but it names people. John Sowell's barn was struck, and he lost 3 cows, a horse, and a lot of fodder. John Martin lost a cow. Somebody else, Joseph Keeler, another unfortunate cow was killed. And then it talks about, there's another one down here where it came down the chimney of someone's house and hit a bedstead where his niece was sleeping, but no one was injured. So really interesting little things you never know. You may think, oh, my ancestor won't be in a county history. He was not. If his cow got struck by lightning, he might be. City directories are fantastic. We have 1.3 billion names in our collection. That's an estimated. And there's thousands of these books out there. And if you're looking for urban ancestors, they're fantastic because urban people moved a lot. But even for rural areas, don't forget to look for either a county history, or a county directory rather, or look for the county seat, because a lot of times the directory for the county seat will include the surrounding townships. So that's really important to know. A lot of people overlook these. And you want to go beyond the residential listings. If you want to know what cemeteries, what churches were in the area at that time, directories, fraternal organizations, all of that type of thing you can find in here. This is a map. I am a map freak. I love maps and I collect them. But these are the historic land ownership maps, and these are actually indexed. You can search this collection by name. So this is my brother-in-law's family. But see how you can see where the families lived in proximity to each other. And that's really kind of interesting to me, is you see a lot of times you see them in clusters, and you can see where the farm was maybe split up between the family members. Now, how do you find these treasures, right? You want to know what's out there for me. Card catalog is a great place to start. There's a couple things to know about it. When you're going to search the card catalog, if you put a term in the title field, that means it has to be in this title, okay? So it's a good way if you want to look for records from just Illinois or whatever. You can also sort here by popularity or database title, record count, all that type of thing. And then you can also search by keyword. And the nice thing about searching by keyword is even if it's not in the title, if it's in the description, it's going to be there. So even though this record collection, I'm looking for Brooklyn, and it's a New York Marriage Index, it includes records from Brooklyn, so it's going to come up in that keyword. And the other nice thing, too, is you can see when we published it and when it's been updated. So if you've searched it a long time ago and come back and see that we've recently updated it, we may have added new records. The other way you can use the card catalog is to filter by vital records here. I've got birth, marriage, and death, USA, Virginia, and I'm looking at just marriage and divorce records. So you can go down and kind of whittle down, and down further you can even do a time frame, either a century or a decade. So you can filter down and get to the records that you want. Another place to access, and I really like exploring the collections by state, is through the state search tab. When you go click on that search tab, there's this map down there. And you can also look at other countries, too, what's available for other countries. But you click on a state, and you'll get taken to a page like this. Now, this is kind of our greatest hits for Michigan, right? But if you see, it says View All. There are actually 29 vital records collections for Michigan. This is just the top 5. So click through to that, look at all of them, and see which ones could provide you the answers that you need. And this is a great place to find those local histories. All the way at the bottom, there's stories, memories, and histories as a little category section, and that you can go there, and then you can go to the county here and find the county, and that's a great way to run across those, because those are not, they're OCR'd books, so they don't surface well at all. You really want to go directly to them, and I like to treat them as a book. A lot of time they'll be broken down by chapter. We have a lot of special collections as well. African American, we have American Indian, Jewish family, New York 400th anniversary. We had a lot of collections that we added for that anniversary, and so that focuses on New York. And then we also have a huge Quaker collection. I think there's 6.4 million records in that. So those are some great records to access too. And so we realized that some of these types of records, you know, if you've got Native American and you're not familiar with Native American research, it can be challenging to get started, right? So we've put together guides, research guides, and they're on these landing pages. So look for them on these special collections pages. There's the one for the American Indian one. If you scroll like halfway down the page, here's one for African American research. And then we also have one for Jewish research there. And finally, here are the Quaker records here, 6.4 million records, and then there's the link to the guide. And Quaker records, if you've got Quaker, you know how amazing these records are. They told you everything, when they came, when they went, when they got married, when they got kicked out sometimes. So really great records. If you run into Quaker ancestors, you definitely want to take advantage of this collection. That concludes it. I hope you go and explore some of these collections. Do any of you have any questions? I've answered all your questions. Oh, good. Thank you. How did it? the special collections. Okay, when you go to the search tab, click on the search tab, right down at the bottom of that tab with all the different categories, here's where you go. And I mentioned, one of the things I mentioned earlier was naturalizations and how we have so many different little collections. The great thing about this is you can go in on the category level here and just search citizenship and naturalization records. Then you're catching all those all those collections at once. So that's a really cool thing to have. Same thing with immigration or passenger lists. One thing to know, though, is we have a category for passenger lists, and we have a category for border crossings. Sometimes people came in through Canada or even Mexico, and so you'll be able to find them even if they didn't arrive at one of the major ports. Yep, click on that search in the black bar there, and then you'll come to this page, and there's the special collections right there. There's the map I was telling you about. You can explore all these places, and you can explore all the different countries too. If you want to know, maybe I've got ancestors from Germany. Do you have records from the place where my ancestor was in Germany? You can go in and explore that and see before maybe you want to upgrade to a World Deluxe. Yes, ma'am. The difference in this search and searching the card catalog is really, this is more of a browse type of experience. It's still going to take you to that direct collection, because really the most powerful search you can do is searching directly in a database. The search forms are built for the data and the things that were indexed in that collection. So you're going to get a more powerful experience, and you're not going to have to wade through all those other records that kind of get in the way. When we have a research question, we say, okay, what record's going to answer my question? And when we do find out what record type, we go and we look here, see what Ancestry has available that will answer our question, and then we go right to it and find our answers. I use both. It depends on the circumstance. One's not more important than the other collection, the data or the card catalog versus the place pages. It depends. If I'm looking for a specific collection, like the non-population schedule, non-population is in the title, so I can just put that in the title and go right to it. Yeah, in the card catalog. And here, this is more of that browse experience. Yeah, see, this is where you're going to look, and you're going to see a list of all the censuses. When you click through that view all, you'll see all the censuses we have for Michigan. You'll also, below that, see a section that says censuses related to Michigan. So that would include all the U.S. federal censuses. So although they're not specific to Michigan, they are related. They're going to include Michigan. So it's kind of a both. I like to use both. I like the card catalog because I can see when collections have been updated. Because if I searched it 5 years ago and they just added new records this year, I want to go back in and check again. What's new? Yes, actually, I haven't got a slide for that. But on the home page, I believe we've added or you know what, type Ancestry recently added collections in Google. But I believe there's a link to it on the home page. And there may even be one on the search page now, too. I'm not sure. So, yes, there is. And if my name is Juliana Szucs. My email is Juliana, Julian, at Ancestry. If you have any other questions or if you can't find something I've talked about, feel free to email me. Okay, thank you very much for being here. Thank you all. Have a good day.